Good morning, I'm Cody Henrichsen, and I wanted to introduce some of the ideas of how we can do some more projects with computer science and Java programming and make it a way that we can actually do a lot more with the students and do some really cool stuff by using, instead of a regular text I/O setup like with the system in the command line, how we can make it and change it so we can use some pop-ups. It makes it a little more fun, and it can even make it more annoying, so you can do some cool stuff with students, and they really tend to like it quite a lot. So again, let's look at how we can do this and use it, text I/O for GUI using Java. A couple things of vocabulary before we get started. We want to make sure we understand that there's some new stuff in here. You may not have seen this before when you're working with your students about how you can actually use some of the stuff to happen. So some things to watch for, to also make sure you're looking for when you're explaining this to your students. Making sure you understand that we're using the JOptionPane. Caps, of course, matter. We have the show message dialog method and the show input dialog method. We're going to be using integer.parseInt and double.parseDouble. You may not have used those that very often inside your classes or projects, but they're a key component when you're looking at handling user input. And finally, another new thing that's outside of the regular AP subset or a course and exam description is the try catch block, because you have to use that when you're trying to actually do conversions. So these are some things you definitely want to watch for as we go through and work on this. So the first thing, why are we going to do something that's going beyond what is normally taught in a regular Java class? We want to make sure we look at options beyond the command line. Now, I know it's a new concept, but most students now don't use the command prompt, especially if they're in a Windows box. That the CMD command is hidden from users explicitly by design on a Windows machine. On a Mac box, terminal, your school may even block terminal from being ran by students. And most schools don't have Linux boxes for regular high school student use. So again, that's the thing. It's like, it's something that we're really seeing very often. It's not a popular system, and we can do cooler stuff with it. And so that's one of the things we want to go beyond that. Another reason why, like I said earlier, you can be fun and or annoying. The power of pop-ups. Now, I know if you were early 2000s on the internet, there's a pop-up, 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 pop-up. I know. But that annoyingness is also part of the fun, because you can do some fun things with it. And it's a great way for students to see the impact of loops and do some great stuff with that, because they can physically react to it a lot more than simply just having something display on the screen and just like that. And so a pop-up, because they have to physically interact and they have to click the button to get out of the pop-up, that's something you can really do a great way to do some interaction with it. So I really recommend it. Another great thing about this is if you're looking about how you can actually see what's inside this, you can see where you are in line with code. Because the pop-up is a modal window, it freezes the actual execution at that point. So you can see, even without going to debug, where are you in the code just by actually looking at the pop-up itself, because it's waiting for processing input. You have to press the OK button or the cancel button to move beyond it. And so it's a great way to force the students to see, like, oh, hey, or not actually force. It's a great way for students to actually see, hey, this is where we are right now. And so it's a great way you can actually mark that. And on top of that, the reason we're actually here today, this is a great way you can actually enhance existing projects. So if you've already made a project that uses user input from the command line using a scanner, you can adapt that very easily. So you can actually do some really cool stuff with this. And so that's why we want to use a pop-up system when we're working with students, and it can really make it a broader experience for the students, and you can do some really fun things. On top of that, you can even go further and go beyond this and do some really cool stuff with the pop-ups by doing more customization and doing some more options along with that. And you can check out some of the other videos that I've made for this, but you can do some really cool things with it. So what do we need to do to make this? So you have your existing project, of course, we'll worry about that in a minute, but you do need to make a new Popup class. Now the Popup class, we're making an object-oriented programming wrapper around the JOptionPane static methods. Now, static methods are a great thing to look at. You do have to know them for a lot of Java classes and projects, but they're not object-oriented. Static is not what we're looking at. And so by creating an object with methods, and we have that idea that we have a reference to the thing, we're telling the Popup class to do this thing. And so one of the things we like that. And it's also, if you make a wrapper around this, an object-oriented wrapper, you can do more cool things, and you can have a more powerful, more unified system for your project. And it's really easy, and it's a good practice for students so they can understand how they can organize their existing how students can organize existing units of code into their own project by making it more customized for them. Also, by using a pop-up class, you can have some good naming conventions. You can explain exactly what you're doing. This is the pop-up thing, and it's going to show as a pop-up. And so you can, again, you have that great way to make it for it. And because it's a pop-up class, once you've made it and you've defined how it works, it's easy to import into other existing projects. And so again, this is a way you can take an existing project and then add a new feature to it and enhance it, make it better. And this is a great way for students to get a little more reflection, and a way to actually can go through and take an existing thing, change it and make it better. And again, we want to make students so that they can learn and enhance their existing projects rather than simply just repeating the same thing over and over. And this is, again, a great way we can make that happen. So what do we have to change? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to examine our existing project code base. We have to look at what we're working with. And we make our, inside our controller equivalent, or what we're working for to actually the main part of the project, we need to make a data member for that class of a pop-up instance. And we, of course, need to initialize it. So inside the constructor for that file, inside the constructor for that class, we initialize it, we go from there. As we go through that project, we also need to make sure we identify all the input and output lines. So we're going to have to actually look through the methods and stuff like, oh, here's an input line, here's an output line, here's an input line, here's an output line. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to add some blank lines after each of those. Because it's like, hey, here's this right here, here's this right here, and I can have a little bit of space. And again, extras, white space in Java land doesn't cause any problems. So it's a great way you can like, okay, I can organize what I'm doing. And again, it's a nice way to go back and relook at the code, examine what's happening. After your first system.println line, you're going to write your view, which is the name of our pop-up instance, .display message, and pass it the same text as a parameter that we had inside the system.println. And then after our first scanner line, we'll write string response is equal to view.askQuestions. View is our pop-up instance, and askQuestion is the method we use to send that, and again, the same text we were working for from that input line that was above it. We'd comment out the associated system and scanner line, so it's just having what would be going to that, and then we run our project, and we actually can see what's going to happen with that. Now, when we're working with this, we have to handle a little bit of conversion because scanner is a really powerful tool. It's a really amazing tool because a scanner, you can read an int, you can read a boolean, you can read a double, you can read a float, you can read anything you want in there. Unfortunately, though, the only problem we have when we're working with the GUI system, a pop-up can only handle string values. Oh no, strings. Wait, we work with strings all the time inside a Java project. So what we need to do now is we have to have a way to we can explicitly convert string values into int or double values that we're working with. And so we have to use some defensive programming really early. Now, I actually start my students with this off as about 2 weeks in, because I stopped using system.println in my class really early. I start switching to pop-ups immediately, because it's like, oh, we're going to handle this often. But if you don't want to start off early with this, it's really easy to add in. All we have to do is we have to add in how we can support using defensive programming. We have to use that try-catch block we were just talking about. And so I make validation methods. I have a validate int and a validate double. You can also do a validate float if you want. There's no reason, however, to make a validate boolean, because when you use the boolean.parseBoolean method, unless it's true, it's always false. So it makes it really easy. You don't have to worry about having a parse on that, because it's like, oh, it's easy peasy. But this way we can also make it so that when our user types in their input, it's not going to crash our program, because everything that they can do by using the magic power of handling loops and working with structures, we can make sure it's like, hey, you didn't type in a number, keep trying again, keep trying again, keep trying again. And then that pop, 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 pop really helps the students see what's going on inside the code, because again, they have to wait for the proper execution, and the students can see exactly what's going on. It won't proceed until that passing condition has been met. And so we do that with using a try-catch block. The try-catch block is how we handle exceptions. And so we put the code that could potentially cause an error surrounded by a try block, and the catch block, wait for it, it catches the exception. So instead of crashing your system, you catch it and then you handle it. And it's a really, really easy. So we're going to take a look and see how we can do that in just a second. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the code. So we're making this happen. Using the existing project, we can see how we can make that happen. As you can see, I'm inside Eclipse. This will work with any IDE you're working with. You can even use Replit using a Java Swing project to make this happen. It's only a small change you have to make, but it's really quite easy. So I have a runner class right here. I'm inside my Constellations demo project. And so in my runner class, all I always do in my runner is just put the main in there. It makes it really easy. And so make an app that I call a start method. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at our demo class and take a look at it. And so in my demo class, I have a scanner instance. So we can see how we normally would do something with that. And then we have our interact method, which is called by the start. So my text scanner is a new scanner. And so my normal method right here, I'm going to call the start method. It's going to call interact. And I have my system.println statements. Welcome to the Constellations Center. We need to address the systemic racism, sexism, and gender in computer science. What is your first suggestion? And then we respond to that with a string answer as a text scanner next line. So we're going to grab that response. And I read that you said that answer, so we can parse that and concatenate that information and then say thank you. So again, we're addressing some of the issues that exist inside computer science with systemic racism, sexism, and gender issues, and we have to address that right here. We can even address some of the issues in computer science, like racism and sexism, like gender-based issues, and we can address them in our projects we work with students. Again, just a quick way we can do that right there. And so if I run this program right now, if I go ahead and hit play on that, again, you can see I'm inside my console. And what's your first suggestion? So my first suggestion is to actively recruit Black and Indigenous persons of color to our classes. I read that you said actively recruit Black and Indigenous persons of color to our classes. Thank you. So again, we can explicitly use that right here. So we have our existing project we can go for and actually use this to do some stuff. So here's, again, just a standard quick text input-output project. No big deal. Let's go ahead and let's see what we can do to make that go a little bit better. So we want to go ahead and take a look at that pop-up class we were just talking about. So again, here's the pop-up class. The entire file is right here. So public class pop-up, no big deal. We have an import for javax.swing.JOptionPane. It's in the Java X library, the extended Java library, in the Swing folder. And inside the Swing folder, we have the JOptionPane class we're working with. Like I said, again, we have two methods we have to make to start off with. We have our askQuestion method and our displayMessage method. AskQuestion returns a string type. It takes a question as a parameter. And we build a response right here. So we say string result equals, and then I'm using an empty set of quotes right here because if this user, when they click on their window, if they choose the cancel button or the red X in the corner, it's going to return null. Oh, we don't want to have a null. So again, we want to have that defensive programming report right here. So if I put in that quote right here, even if they click on cancel or that null turns into the string, the word null, and it won't crash anything because we have a string valid response. So we can grab that right there. So that's what we're doing with that one. And that result then gets returned as the value for that string method. We then have our public void display message method. It's really quite basic. It takes a string parameter and it simply just passes that parameter string to the JOptionPane show message dialog method as its second parameter text. The null in both of these methods right here refers to the owner of the window. What active J component is holding this? And since it's passing it null, it means no program is owning that window itself that's on the screen. And so it's just owning by the actual window of the actual computer that's running this application right now. So it'll show up in the front middle of the screen. So it makes it really easy. And so that's what that first parameter is going for in that. So let's take a look at this. Let's go a step further and let's go to demo 2. So demo 2 is just a copy of the original one, but I have the text scanner and I added I had that original scanner, but I added a new data member pop-up that's named view. And again, inside my constructor, demo 2, I initialize my scanner, and I also initialize my pop-up class. Same thing, start method calls the interact method, and just like I talked about, so hello and welcome to the Constellations Center, that same string, I commented out that message right here, and replaced it with this, and there's another one, view.display message, we need to address systemic racism, sexism, and gender. And then we have what is your first suggestion? We have that string response right there, so view.askQuestion, and we grab it from there, and we store that in response. And I read that you said response thank you. And then again, we talk about how we can add some silliness to this. And so again, I want to address the fact that we're talking about issues of racism, sexism in computer science right now, but we also can show, we can quick do a demo of this. And so we have how can we type in a number. And as long as that number is valid, we're going to say, oh, keep trying to use a number, popping it up, and we'll use that loop to keep going through there. And so this next bit right here is where we use that validation. So here we have the validation method. And so I have a validation method for int and double. I'm only using the int one right now, but I have both on display so you can see how they work. So it has a private Boolean for both the methods. It takes a string parameter. I'm just going to get text because it's pretty boring. I say a Boolean is valid. I define the default value as false. I then use the try block, and I say integer.parseInt next. Notice that I'm not storing the result from that. I'm just saying, can I convert this to an integer? If it doesn't crash, then the next line of executes is valid as assigned true. However, if the text is not parsable to be turned into an int, that will throw an exception. It gets caught by the catch block, and it says a new pop-up message saying, hey, try and use an integer value. So boom, it will give an information right back to the user saying, hey, this is what we need to fix this. And then return the is valid back to the method that called it. Same thing for validate double. It's the same basic approach. The only difference is instead of integer.parseInt, I use double.parseDouble, and that same process happens again where I say double.parseDouble. If it is parsable, is valid gets set to true. Otherwise, it says try typing a double value, and we can return that value based on that. So let's go ahead and let's change our runner. So we'll call demo 2 instead of demo 1. So I'll just add a 2 right here and a 2 right here. No big change. Save my code and rerun it. Hello, and welcome to the Constellations Center. Okay, boom, I'm right there. It's a quick, easy way to make that happen. I say okay. We need to address the systemic racism, sexism, and gender issues in computer science. Yes, we do. And as you can see right here, it's right here in the middle of the screen. We can't avoid it. It's right here. And it's waiting for us to actually do something. I have to press either OK or the X in the corner to cancel out of it. What is your first suggestion? Invite LGBTQIA plus students to class. We want to invite more people to our classroom. We want to make sure they explicitly feel welcome and get them inside our class. And so I say okay again. And I read that you said invite more LGBTQIA plus students to class. Thank you. So again, we have the ability to explicitly get more students in our classroom, whether it is Black and Indigenous persons of color or LGBTQIA plus students to class. We can get them inside our class and we do explicitly work at making that happen. And we can even show inside our projects like this. We can address ways of making that happen in our class projects so that students can see ways that we can also invite them to help solve some of these problems right here as well. And so again, we just press OK or enter. And then we can say, how silly should we be? Type a number. So I type in the word 4 and press enter. Try to use an integer value. Okay. Keep trying to use a number. Okay. Try using an integer. Oh no. I'm in my loop. And I'm stuck inside here. I can't get out of that. So let's go take a look at our code and see what's happening right here. So again, we're inside that process. I'm going to go to demo 2. And I have my lovely response right here. So we'll validate in response, view display message, keep trying to use a number, but I never change that response value. Oh, I have to make sure I do that. So instead of having view.display message, I should change this to be a view.askQuestion and restore that value in the response. So I'll say that response equals, instead of view.display message, I'm going to change that to view.askQuestion. And now when I run this one, let's try it again. Welcome to the Constellation Center again. We need to address systemic racism, sexism, and gender again. What is my first suggestion? My first suggestion, employ anti-racist strategies in class. Okay, I read that you said employ anti-racist strategies in class. Thank you. Okay, boom. So now again, we get back to how silly should we be? Type in a number. If I type in 4, try using an integer value, and now it prompts us back to keep trying to use a number. Oh, okay. So if I type in something that's also not a word, just some keyboard gibberish. If I normally would do this, it would crash and burn. But again, it brings us right back and keep trying to use a number. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hey, this is the 0th iteration. The first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. Oh my gosh. And this is where you can see how annoying we can be because I typed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is going to take 12,000 or 123,456 entries to make that happen. And that's going to take forever. Yeah. It's a great way that students can see this, but you can actually see the execution of the loop right here, and students can explicitly see what's happening inside their code because they can see what's going on right here very easily. We can see that as I'm going through that loop, it's going to keep saying that, hey, here's the index iteration. And so you can see that happening. If I were to do this inside a system.println sequence, it'll just go all the way down the screen over and over and over again really fast. And they don't see the execution sequence that's happening. By using the modal window of the pop-up, we can see explicitly what's going to happen with that. Now, there's one more file inside the project that I want to make sure I can show you. I have a Java popup.xlsx file. This is so you can put it inside a Kahoot and have a preset of quizzes you can use to make sure you understand what's going on with that. So let's go ahead and I'm going to pop that up and take a look at it. And so if you've used Kahoot before in your class, you can use this to have questions and go through stuff. And so you can also use an Excel file to import the questions directly. And so I have some questions right here to make sure that you're understanding what's going on when using this. Again, I apologize I was not able to actually be at the Constellations Center presentation. I was stuck in a meeting that did not end until way after, but I do want to make sure you have the resources available for this. And so here we have 10 questions you can use to make sure you're understanding how JOptionPane and the Popup class works. The correct answer for all these is set as number 1, but you can set it so it'll randomize it as it goes through, and then you have some options that will go along for the wrong answers or distractors to go along with it. And it has the file format right here, and this is part of the actual resource that's also available inside the repository, which I'll link inside the video link as well, but it's also available, I believe, already from the Constellation Center on their resources as well. But again, that's a quick way you can take a look at this. So let's do a quick review over the stuff you have to do to make sure this happens. So again, we need to make a pop-up class. The pop-up class is not very much. It's just 2 methods. One that has a string return that gives the answer that the user types back in, as well as one that just does a pop-up, so display message. and you can have that happen. The display message is a void type. It simply just displays that message to the user. When you go through and you actually make this happen, all you have to do is change inside your project. Anytime you have a system.println, you replace that line with the data member.displayMessage and pass it the exact same value, be passing through that. And again, I like to make it so when I'm first doing this project, all I do is I comment out the existing line and replace it with that new line right there. So that's how you can enhance an existing project, because all you have to do is just go through and add those changes to go through that and then make that happen. And you can just simply make that, go through the process on that. To make it so it does better stuff and handles more complex evaluations, we do have to validate user input. And so I have a validate int and validate double method to go along with that. And so we can make that happen by having these two methods right here, where it uses the try catch block to make that happen. And so it takes a string text, it checks to see if it can be converted either to an integer or to a double, returns a false if it can't, and doesn't crash the system. It simply just displays a pop-up message reminding the user that that's not what they should be doing. And so we can make that happen right there. We can then use a loop to process that information. Right here I have a while not validate int response. It keeps asking that question over and over again, so they don't have to worry about crashing their system. So again, we saw the vocab that went along with this. We have our JOptionPane class with its two associated methods we have to use. We have to parse our information with either integer.parseInt or double.parseDouble. And we wrap our solutions inside the try catch, so we can keep on making that happen, and we can make that go along with it. Again, all we have to do is change the information from system.println to the view.displayMessage, name of that data member, and view.askQuestion when we're storing the information from the user's response. We can then make that happen really easily. Again, this will work in any IDE. I happen to use Eclipse, but I know this will work inside Replit as well as JGrass, JCreator, etc. So you can make this work with basically any single system, and it works really easily, so you can easily change existing projects. I hope you can have a lot of fun with this and students can create some cool projects. Thanks again, and have a great day. Cheers.